Are you excited about summer, but at the same time you feel some amount of anxiety because you're not entirely sure how to transition into summer and what to do? Well, let's talk about summer plans today. My name is Janae Daniels. I'm a wife, a mother of 6, and a former middle school teacher turned homeschool mom. I have kids in their 20s all the way down to elementary age. Are you afraid to leave the school system like I was? My hope is to help you leave the school system so that you can take the hearts and minds of your children back. Welcome to the School to Homeschool podcast. If you're new to homeschooling, perhaps you're about to start homeschooling or you've been homeschooling this year, there's some amount of anxiety as to what do you do during the summer? And I don't know about you, but for those of you who have been homeschooling, in the past, my summers have either been like where I didn't do anything. And then we got to the end of the summer, I'm like, oh, we just wasted that whole, like all that time. Or I overbook and overcommit myself, which happens far more than not, where I'm like, the kids are going to do a million things. We're going to do swimming lessons and we're going to do vacation Bible school and we're going to do this lesson and these camps. Although, let's be honest, the pocketbook does limit how many camps children can do. So I've been thinking about this as we're gearing up into summer. And today I want to talk about how we can make our summer plans matter. And so at the end of the summer, you look back with fond memories instead of regret that you didn't do enough or regret that you did too much. Like we're going to talk about like finding that happy medium somewhere in the middle where we finish the summer where we still feel rested, but at the same time we feel like that was a worthwhile summer. So as we get into that, I want to share a little story with you. Last fall, my kids, and I promise this relates. You'll see it. It will come full circle, my friends. Last fall, the school that my kids went to, or the high school that they would have gone to, like it's a K through 12 school. So they went to that school. They never went to high school there, but they would have gone to high school there. They did a play. They did a very specific musical. And they did Willy Wonka. I'll just tell you what musical it was. They did Willy Wonka. And my daughter, my teenage daughter, is in an enrichment program where once a week they meet together and they work all year long, once a week, to put on a show at the end of the year. So, and the show that they had picked was also Willy Wonka. And so it was interesting because here their old school was doing it in August, and then we would be doing it in May, which it just closed last week. So I went to see the play, and the kids did a great job in August, right? This other school did a great job, and we knew several of the kids that were in the play from church and from when my kids went to public school, and the kids did a really terrific job. But you have to understand, my degree is in theater studies with an emphasis in costume, hair, and makeup design. And I've taken all of the set classes and the lighting classes and all of the tech theater classes and directing. I had to take all those classes. I've directed shows. I've designed for several shows. Then I taught. And so as I'm sitting there watching the play last August, the kids are just putting their hearts and souls into it. And they did, like, their acting was great and they did a great job. And there was pieces of directing that were really fun. But the tech elements were grossly lacking. And I mean, we're talking like the part of the factory where like the kids come on tour and they come into the factory and it's this magical candy world. It was a gray set. Like there was no candy. It was just a gray platform. And so visually I'm like, oh, that's kind of a letdown. And the costumes, it was almost like there was a couple costumes that were really good. The guy who played the Candyman, you could tell his mom probably did the costume. It was adorable. He had a red tie and a white button-down shirt on and a red striped vest and a red apron, and then he had black pants and black shoes and kind of this wedge cap like they have at In-N-Out Burgers, except for like it was a Candyman hat. And he looked adorable, right? And he sang, the Candyman can. And then Violet Beauregard and her mom had matching jogging suits. But otherwise, the costumes were like, eh. It was almost like the theater teacher the night before was like, oh, shoot, we're doing Willy Wonka tomorrow, and I need you guys to go and find some costumes from your closet and wear them tomorrow. Like that's what it visually looked like. It was just kind of like very thrown together. There was no cohesiveness to the show as far as the technical visual elements go. Again, their singing was great and their acting was great, and there was fun parts of directing that they had done, but the visual elements were pretty grossly lacking. And so I'm sitting there watching the show knowing that our enrichment program, which is done through the school district, actually, ironically enough, I'm sitting there watching it, and by intermission, I have all of these thoughts in my head of, man, wouldn't it be cool if the Candy kids were wearing black and white, and then there was splashes of color, like they had, like the girls might have like hot pink tights, or like some splashes of color. And wouldn't it be cool if it was set in the 1960s when the book was actually written? Not in the 70s when the original movie was made, but like in the 60s when the book was written, so that we get Roald Dahl's like what he would have seen as he's writing this book, right? And I loved when Wonka, the musical, came out with Timothée Chalamet. Like the visual elements were just stunning, right? It was so just beautifully done. And so all these thoughts are running through my head. And so at intermission, I messaged the 3 teachers, because they have a choreography teacher, they have a vocal coach, and then they have the main director. And then they have an art teacher that helps with the set design for the enrichment program for the homeschooling group. So I text them and I'm like, hey, if you guys wouldn't mind, which they'd brought up last year, they said, hey, we know that you were a designer. Would you be willing to help with the play? And I said, sure. But then I hadn't talked to them since, the end of last year. So I text them, or I messaged them, and I'm like, hey, I've got some ideas for a concept for Willy Wonka. Since we're doing it, if you wouldn't mind, could I share some of the ideas with you? And so they're like, absolutely. Any extra help that we can get, we'd love. Which is funny, because I'd always offer with the public schools that my kids went to. I'm like, I'd love to help any way I can. And the teachers were always like, yeah, thanks for your help. And then they would never take me up on helping. Except for one teacher who brought me in one day during a dress rehearsal, and they hadn't even gotten their costumes yet. She's like, oh, the show's tomorrow. Go get your costumes from the costume. Go find some costumes in the costume room. And they went into a closet and grabbed something, came out, and I was like, oh dear. And I asked her, I'm like, what would you like me to do to help you? And she goes, I just figured you'd like to just watch it. And I'm like, okay. I had to find a babysitter for this. I mean, this is years ago, when my now almost 27-year-old was, 13. And so I was like, oh, okay, I got a babysitter to come and watch the show. I'm like, okay, they don't want my help. I get it. I hear you. The end. So I messaged the theater teachers, and they're like, we would love your help. Could you actually run the little costume group? Because all of the kids, not only do they perform in the show, but they also have to like be in a props group, or the set designing group, or the costume group, or whatever group. And so I've got like 4 girls, including my own daughter, who are in the costume group. So we meet together, and I, on Friday, and they have like a 2-hour breakout or an hour and a half breakout of working in the groups when they're not working on learning the music and the dances and all that stuff. And so I start meeting with the kids, and I talk with the theater teachers, and I create a concept of what the show visually could look like. The set pieces were pretty standard. Like, we just want bright colors for the set pieces, and they had the ideas, and I was like, okay. So I went to the teachers. I'm like, here's my concept. What if we placed it in the 1960s, like 1964 specifically, and we, the Candy kids are all in black and white, and I know you've been worried about the flying squirrels during Veruca's scene where they're sorting nuts, which is, it's not in the original movie, but it's in the actual book, as they were squirrels sorting nuts. What if we made them flying squirrels? And it would be hilarious if they had aviation goggles and the whole 9 yards. And I did some renderings and some mock sketches. And what if we did this? And we had all of the main characters be specific colors, like their parents and the main character each have their own color. And we have like Veruca in red because she's dominant and bossy, and and then we have Violet. I mean, it's in her name. We have her in like that blue purple color with her mom. And anyway, so we started having a lot of fun, and make sure we pay homage to the Oompa Loompas. When we saw the show in the fall, they wore white overalls, but otherwise they just looked like kids in white overalls with, multicolored shirts. And let's bring in the elements of the brown and the stripes and the orange, and make sure they have green wigs. But we're not going to paint their faces orange or anything like that. But let's bring in like orange tights, or like an orange tutu over white suspenders and white shorts. So and they had purchased some things in the summer, and so I'm like, let's utilize the things that you already have, and create this vision. And so I created vision boards. I did research to show the kids and the teachers what 1960s hairstyles would have looked like for men, women, boys, and girls, as well as their clothing. And we went about designing the show and worked on it all year long. And then last week, the show came out. And visually, y'all, it was stunning. And it was so fun seeing all those elements of, bouffant hairdos and beehives, and just really playing with those elements. And people kept saying, who saw both shows, they're like, wow, we saw both shows. Like, this one was both did great with acting and singing, but the visual elements of the show were great. I also had worked and collaborated with the art teacher, and I was always collaborating with the directors, because they ultimately had the end say in what decisions were made. But they were so gracious to let me come in and bring in all these visual elements with the costume pieces and the costume designs. And it turned out visually, it was really, 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 really stunning. The thing that happened is that throughout the process, as I was explaining, as decisions were having to be made with choreography and directing and all of this stuff, we would often come back. Again, I didn't do the choreography. I didn't do any of the directing. I just did the costume design. But everything always came back to, okay, what's the concept behind the show? Okay, they're flying squirrels. So the choreographer's like, oh, I can really have fun with a choreography based on what's being done with the costumes. Like, oh, since we're doing it in the 60s, I can bring in these elements, right? And then when there was a question about something, we'd go back to the original concept. For example, one of the dance teacher would always forget. She's like, I've got menopause brain. I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, you're fine. But she'd forget, and she'd be like, I have an idea for Violet Beauregard's. Okay, if we got this maxi dress, and I'm like, and I'd come back and be like, so would that fit with the 1960s? And she goes, oh my gosh, no, it sure wouldn't. Oh, this makes it super easy. Okay, let's find a dress that looks like it's from the 1960s. And we did, and it was blue, and it looked great. So it became, we were able to come back to the concept whenever there was like a question, like, okay, what do we want to do about this, or this element, or this coloring, or this? We would bring it back to, okay, does it fit with the concept? Because the concept that the directors wanted as well is they wanted it really, really whimsical. And so the 1960s concept and playing with that played into that whimsy, and playing with the color played into that whimsy. And what they did with some of the set design, y'all, it turned out so cool. Like the scene where they're floating in the bubbles, they did it on a teeter-totter, and it was super cool. But it always came back to that. Okay, is it whimsical, and do we make it whimsical? And then as far as some of the other visual elements, Does that bring in the 1960s? Even though it didn't 100% match with the script, we're like, the director's like, we don't care. Like, the concept is really, really cool. We've got this whimsy with the 1960s. This is super fun. And they knocked it out of the park. Like, it just turned out awesome. Now, again, bringing it back to the initial concept, that initial vision of we want whimsical, we're doing it in the 1960s, that enabled other questions that came up easy to answer. Well, does it fit into the concept? Does it fit into the vision that you have that they had for the play? Does it fit in the vision? If it didn't, then the answer was like, yeah, we're not going to do that thing. If it did fit in the vision, then the directors would be like, oh, what if, we did that, but brought in this and this and this. Anyway, it was so fun. We had such a great time, and they knocked it out of the park. And even the professional theater that we had it at, because they had to rent a theater and it was a professional theater, the tech crew was like, this is one of the most stunning high school plays we have ever seen. Because I talked to all the tech guys, and they're like, it was incredible. The acting was amazing. The singing was amazing. The dancing was amazing. The costumes and the sets were beautiful. Like, this was amazing. And it was far better than most high school productions that we see. But again, I think what it all narrowed down to, it wasn't that the kids were any better or that the directors were any better than any other directors, even though they are really awesome directors. It all came down to that the directors had a vision of what they wanted. I got to have some input into that vision. And that vision became the guide for the whole show. So I know you know where I'm going with this. In our homeschooling, we have to have a vision. We have to have a vision of what we want the end goal to be like. As Stephen Covey says in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we begin with the end in mind. You always want to begin with the end in mind. Well, as with our homeschooling, that's how we want our summers to be as well. Because I know for me, I don't want to have another summer where I regret, where I'm like, oh, we wasted all that time and did nothing. Or we were so busy that I didn't have time to enjoy the summer. Like, I want to have a summer that is memorable for our children, and that my kids look back and go, oh man, that was so fun. As a matter of fact, just before I started recording, just like 20 minutes ago, right before I came in here, I was talking to my kids, and my son goes, what are you going to talk about today, Mom? And I said, I'm going to talk about making summer plans and how to really make summer worthwhile as a family. And he said, what are some of our plans for this summer? Because I haven't really talked to the kids about some of the plans. Like, there's certain things that we have to do and certain vacations that we're going to be going on. And I said, well, I really want to do some staycations, and I want to do this and want to do this. And he said, oh, do you remember the time that we listened to Story of the World and we drove out to the paint mines? And it's these rock formations and these hikes here in Colorado. And they're very, very different. And anyway, and I'm like, I do. And he's like, that was so fun. And then Kara, my youngest, was like, Mom, do you remember when we went here? And she mentioned this other thing that we went and did. I'm like, I do remember that. And she was like, that was so fun. And so I started thinking, like, what do I want to do? So at the end of the summer, the kids have really fond memories that they look back and go, oh, remember that? Because you know what they're not going to remember? They're not going to remember playing video games. Like, that's not something that becomes a lasting memory. Like, they might remember playing the video games, but, being on level 22 or whatever of whatever video game is not going to have that lasting impression or lasting memory on them like having an experience with your family. So I want to talk about the 3 things that you can do and I can do to ensure that our summer is enchanting and magical and wonderful. I've talked before about making a magical Christmas. Well, let's make an enchanting summer. So the first thing that you need to do, and I've already brought this up, is I want you to have a vision. I want you to create like specifically create a plan, like have your vision and create your plan around that vision. When I was in hiring, a question that I would often ask candidates, and I was in hiring for like 20 years, y'all. Like I got really burned out from hiring. But anyway, a question that I would often ask candidates would be, let's pretend you and I went out to lunch 5 years from now, and you told me this has been the best 5 years of my life as far as work goes. Or as far as my life goes, this was the best 5 years, this past 5 years working for you. And I ask you, what happened or that made it the best 5 years? Okay. And that enabled the candidates to really think about, like, what would 5 great years look like? What would need to happen for it to be that best 5 years? So I'm going to ask you this question right now. Let's pretend you and I are going out to lunch and we're going somewhere fun and none of the kids are with us. It's just you and me. And we're going out to lunch and it's September. It's September 2025. Or if you're listening to this and it's 2026, it's September. Okay. My question for you, mama or grandma, if you're a dad, I probably wouldn't be going out to lunch with you. Because I wouldn't do that. But mamas and grandmas, dads, you can think of it in the back of your heads, but mamas and grandmas, we're out to lunch. It's September. And I'm going to ask you the question. Let's pretend that you tell me that this was the best summer your family has ever had. What happened that made it the best summer? I want you to think about that for just a second. And then I want you to write down what was it that you did, or what memories made it the best summer. What memories would you want your kids to have that made it the best summer? Just as I was just coming in here, Mom, do you remember when we went to the paint mines and we listened to Story of the World all the way there and all the way back? I can even tell you what part of Story of the World we were listening to. Me, Janae Daniels, can tell you what part of Story of the World we were listening to as we drove out there. Joshua even said, he's like, I think and I said, what was it that you loved about it? And he goes, I just loved being together and we were listening to stories and we were laughing and we were talking. And then we just hiked and it was just fun. I just remember just it being good. So what memories, again, we're sitting at lunch, you and I, and it's September. And what memories you're looking back on the summer, what memories would you want your kids to say, oh, that was so fun? Maybe it's that you went fishing once a week. Maybe it's that you went on a hike once a week. Or maybe it's you're like, we are going to the swimming pool 3 days a week. Or maybe it's you're like, we are going to do nature journaling. Or maybe it's you're like, we are going to do 3 family vacations. And then, whatever it is. I don't know what that's going to look like. And I don't know what makes your family tick, right? Because our families are not the same. But what are the things that would make your mama heart feel full and rich and full of joy? What things would your kids say that would make you feel full? Like your heart is just full of gratitude because it was so good. Okay, so that's how you create your vision, is whatever that answer is. Now you're going to work backwards. And you're going to create a plan around that vision. For me, I really want a nature journal. I was so inspired by John Muir Laws, and when he interviewed, and I don't know if y'all as listeners felt the power as much as when I was actually talking to him. For me, having that one-on-one conversation, it inspired me so much that I'm like, wow, I am so delighted by this wonder that as adults, we can still have wonder. And I'm like, I want to nature journal with my kids. We've done it a little bit, but I want to do it more. And so I'm like, I want to nature journal. My kids love to hike. And so I'm like, I want to hike regularly. I do want to plan on a camp out and do a little hiking trip, like that's overnight with my kids, now that they're all old enough that they can carry their own backpacks without me carrying it. I really want to go on some adventures around town. Because my husband's in real estate, we're not able to do a lot of big family vacations during the summertime. When we do vacations, it usually has to be in the winter when real estate is not in full swing, because summer is the busy season for us. But when we can, if I'm able, or if we're able, we try to take a small family vacation somewhere. There's some other things I want to do. Like I want to declutter my house and everything. But I started thinking about that and I'm like, okay, so I've also had to decide, do I want to continue doing specific subjects with my kids during the summer? One of the things I decided is like no, we probably won't be doing history this summer. Unless it comes up in our read alouds. But I do want to keep reading aloud with my kids. Like those are some things, like when I ask my kids now what their favorite parts of homeschooling are, often it's the read alouds. It's the listening to Story of the World. It's listening I'm once again listening to Where the Red Fern Grows with Jacob, and I'm reading it to him. Like that's the book he and I are reading together. Because he doesn't remember it from 5 years ago, because he was 8 or 9 when we started. He was 8 when we started homeschooling. So those are some things that I'm like, okay, these are things that are wonderful, magical, happy things for me. So those are some things I'm going to need to schedule. So as I look at my vision, I'm like, I would want my kids to say reading aloud, reading under the stars. Last summer we did a camp out in the backyard, just Kara and I, and that was so fun up until 1 o'clock in the morning when the sprinklers turned on. That was not fun. I forgot that they were turning on. I should have turned them off. Anyway, that part was not fun. She was delighted, me not so much. But I started thinking like, okay, yeah, I want to do s'mores in the backyard. And so I've started making a list of things that I really, really want to do with the kids. And I decided also, okay, I do like to continue some amount of studies. Again, we're eclectic unschoolers. So the eclectic part being that I do have certain subjects that I expect my kids to do and do well. And then beyond that, we're child passion-led or interest-led or child-led learning, where there might be things that they're interested in, and then we give them the resources to learn those things and help them to learn those things. So eclectic unschoolers is what we are. And so I started thinking, I do want to continue with the reading, writing, and math with them through the summer, but we may not be doing the civics or the history, which are non-negotiables for me because I don't want to repeat the past, and I want my kids to not have to repeat the past. So the first thing is create your vision. Make a list of things that you really, really, memories that you want to have. Then you're going to schedule them. You're going to put them on a schedule. At the beginning of the year, I can't remember if I shared this or not, but I bought this calendar. It's called the Big A calendar, ASS calendar. And Jesse Rissler created this, and it's this huge calendar. And it has every day of the year all in one spot. And so I'm utilizing that this summer to make sure that I schedule those things. So second thing, you're going to schedule the most important things. We are doing a camp out, even if it's only 2 days. I want to schedule when and where we're going to be going. I want to do daycations once a week, because that was my goal at the beginning of the year. We did it for the first semester, second semester. My kids started a survival skills class, which then took out the day that we were supposed to do field trips. And my kids brought up, well, since we don't have any enrichment programs, can we do field trips again? And so I'm like, I will schedule a field trip once a week, and we're going to put it on the calendar. We're going to put what field trip that we're going to do so that it's there. It's already decided and the time doesn't escape from us. I want to schedule in, like, if they do have a camp, which right now only 2 of my kids have camps, like, schedule in the camps. And I really don't want to do too many things. Like, I want just enough things where each day there's something significant and great, and then something that they can sink their teeth into, whether it's a hike or hike and nature journaling. I really want a nature journal once a week. Okay. So, and then have the rest of the day free. So if we decide that we want to go swimming, we can go swimming. So I don't want to overschedule. I want there to be some white space in our calendar. So we have some scheduled things each day and then white space. As unschoolers, people often think that we don't ever follow any sort of a schedule, which I think is a gross misunderstanding. Like, for my kids, there are expectations. I'm a parent, and we do have we do schedule things, and my kids are expected to be up and dressed, right? We don't stay in our pajamas all day. I'm up early in the morning. I'm exercising, and the kids are expected, they need to get their chores done and they need to get their work done before they're allowed to do fun things. And so I find it's easiest for me if I still have rhythms and routines, maybe not a strict absolute schedule, like you are up by this time, like you are expected to be here from this time to this time, and from this time to this time you do this. During the school year, we do have some amount of that, because I'm like, okay, the kids have enrichment programs that they have to be to at a certain time. Camps, they have to be there at a certain time, right? But the days that we don't have things, and now that the summer is opening up and we don't have the enrichment programs, I'm like, I still want some semblance of a schedule. I want rhythms and routines, but it doesn't have to be a strict schedule, but I do want some semblance of, like, okay, kids, everybody needs to have their stuff done by this time. You don't have to necessarily schedule every minute, but as long as there's some amount of routine, it's good for us, it's good for the kids. So that's part number 2. Create a schedule and put it on paper. Put it on your calendar so it counts. And then the third thing that you're going to do is, as you're doing this, you're going to keep it simple. Don't overbook yourselves. I love what Warren Buffett does. I had heard, and I don't know if this is all accurate. I just heard about this once on Instagram or something, that Warren Buffett will write down everything he needs to do in a day, and he'll circle the top 3 most important things, and then he'll throw the rest of the list away and only do the 3 most important things. That's it. And he's able to get a lot done because he just focuses on those 3 things on a given day. And so what I find interesting about that is that he keeps things really, really simple. I've got to get these 3 things done. Everything else can wait. These 3 things need to be the most important. For me, I'm lucky if I get even 3 things done a day. I'm like, okay, what's the one most important thing that I can get done today? Because I know that things are going to come up. And so for our summer, keep it simple. You don't have to have a million things on your list. Maybe you're like, I want to take my kids swimming every day. Then great. I want to read aloud. Whether or not you choose to do school, totally up to you. Remember, school doesn't have to look like book work. It really doesn't. Like, I still count nature journaling as school. If we go swimming, I'm going to count that as school. That is PE. That is exercise. They are in the water. They are learning a skill. If we go hiking and we're in the natural world, again, that's physical education. Like, that counts. If we're nature journaling, that's science, right? So I simplify. I'm this summer, like last summer, I felt like we way underdid it, and this summer I'm like, I don't want to overdo it because 2 summers ago I overdid it. So this summer I'm like, nope. These are the ongoing things that I want to do. I'm scheduling the vacations that we need to go on or that we plan to do. Like I might go visit my parents. That's in the plan. So we've got to schedule that. But then, okay, I want a nature journal. So I'm going to do that. We're going to schedule what day each week we're going to do that. We're going to read aloud with the kids. I want to do that at least 4 times a week. If I could do it every day, that'd be great. But sometimes it doesn't happen. So 4 times a week. I want to hike once a week with the kids. It doesn't have to be a long hike. It could even be like a half an hour hike tops. I want to declutter my house. That actually, well, the kids are going to have to help me with that. 1 room at a time a week, not a day. And then we'll continue with they do a little bit of writing and math a couple times a week, right? Not even every day, just a couple times a week. And that's a full summer for us. And there we are. So I hope that you have a great summer. You're going to start with have a vision, create your vision and a plan. You're going to schedule the most important things and put those things on the schedule. You're going to stick to the schedule too, and you're going to keep it simple. Those are the 3 things that you can do to keep your summer enchanting, not too overwhelming and not underwhelming. But I'm going to end with, again, the question that I'm going to ask if we were to go out to lunch in September, pretending we're going out to lunch, you and I, is what happened to make this past summer the best summer ever? You're going to answer that question. That's going to be your springboard. With that, my friends, I hope you have a marvelous summer. Next week, we got part 2 coming. We are going to record it after his graduation, which is on Tuesday. We are doing his private graduation ceremony and party afterwards. And he will be sharing next week. We will record all the other things that he learned and his upcoming plans for the future now that he's graduating. So with that, you're doing better than you think you are. You got this. We'll talk next week.